The Texas sun glowed soft and golden across the small town of Willow Creek, painting the streets in warmth that felt almost too perfect, too still. Officer Daniel Reed stood in his front yard, trimming the rose bushes as his wife, Emily, watched from the kitchen window. From a distance, they looked like the picture of a small-town dream. A respected cop, his graceful wife, a charming two-story home with a white porch swing and a golden retriever asleep near the fence. But Emily had learned long ago that perfect pictures often hide the deepest cracks. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes fixed on Daniel's steady movements. He was calm, methodical, his uniform shirt clinging to his shoulders in the morning heat. But it wasn't his posture that unsettled her. It was a silence. He hadn't spoken much these past few weeks. No morning jokes, no teasing remarks about her overwatering the plants, no warmth in his touch when he left for work. Instead, there were phone calls. Late at night, when he thought she was asleep. Muffled voices behind the bathroom door. His tone, low, urgent, almost fearful, made her heart twist. When she'd asked who it was, Daniel had smiled that tired, practiced smile she'd come to hate. Just work, go back to bed. But she'd seen it, the flicker of panic in his eyes. That morning, while he was in the shower, Emily picked up his phone. No missed calls, no messages, no traces of the midnight conversations. He'd started deleting everything. She placed the phone back exactly where she found it, her chest tightening. When he came down for breakfast, she tried to sound casual. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay at the station?" He glanced at her briefly, buttering his toast. "Yeah, just busy. New case paperwork." His voice was flat, emotionless, the kind of tone people use when they've already rehearsed their lies. Emily smiled weakly. "You should take a break. Maybe a weekend away?" "Can't. Too much going on." She nodded, pretending to understand, though every word widened the distance between them. After he left, Emily cleaned the kitchen in silence. The ticking of the clock felt louder than usual. On the table, she noticed something she hadn't before, a small envelope tucked halfway under the newspaper. Her name wasn't on it. It was addressed to Officer Daniel Reed, from Huntsville Correctional Facility. Her hand froze. Her first instinct was to call him. Her second, the stronger one, was to open it. But before she could, her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Hey, I forgot my lunch. I'm coming back for a minute." She panicked, shoving the envelope into the drawer. By the time Daniel walked in, smiling faintly, she had composed herself. "You okay?" he asked, eyeing her strangely. "Fine," she lied. He leaned in to kiss her cheek, his lips cold. "I'll be home late again. Don't wait up." She watched him leave, that faint trace of guilt flickering in his eyes as he turned away. The front door closed softly, and the sound of his car faded down the road. Emily walked back to the drawer and pulled the envelope out again. She turned it over in her trembling hands. The paper was rough, the ink slightly smeared. She could almost picture the hand that wrote it, callous, dangerous, desperate. Her heart pounded in her throat. A letter from a prisoner, addressed to her husband. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant hum of sirens from town. Inside, Emily stood frozen, staring at the envelope that could shatter her carefully built world. She didn't open it. Not yet. But the thought lingered, poisonous and alive. What secret was Daniel hiding that reached all the way inside a Texas prison? And as the camera of fate slowly panned away from their pristine home, the viewer would see what Emily couldn't. A dark shadow moving across her driveway, pausing just long enough to slip something into their mailbox. Something else with her name on it. Emily sat at the kitchen table long after the morning light had faded into the soft gray of late afternoon. The envelope still lay before her, the one from the Huntsville Correctional Facility, its edges now crumpled from her restless fingers. For hours she had stared at it, arguing silently with herself. Daniel's words echoed in her head. "Don't wait up." He wouldn't be home until midnight, maybe later. That gave her time. Too much time. Finally, her trembling hands betrayed her restraint. She slid a knife into the flap and pulled out a single sheet of lined paper, the handwriting sharp and jagged, as if carved in anger. "You owe me, Daniel. You don't get to walk away clean. You promised you'd take care of it. I kept my mouth shut for 7 years, but I won't stay silent forever. You know what happens when the truth gets out. Troy Keller, Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. 7 years? The name, Troy Keller, meant nothing to her, but the tone of the letter felt personal. Dangerous. She read again, slower this time, searching for meaning between the lines. The words, walk away clean, chilled her. Daniel wasn't a man who scared easily. She'd seen him handle violent arrests, tragic accidents, scenes that would break others. But lately, the sleepless nights, the locked phone, the way he'd been drinking after work. Maybe it all started with this. She placed the letter back inside the envelope, suddenly terrified of being caught with it. But before she could hide it, headlights swept across the living room window. Her breath caught. Daniel's truck. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. Emily shoved the envelope under a stack of old mail just as the front door opened. Daniel stepped in, his uniform half unbuttoned, fatigue and something darker clouding his expression. "Hey," he said, voice rough. "Forgot my paperwork." He glanced at the table. For a second, his eyes lingered on the mail pile, long enough to make Emily's stomach twist. But then he looked away, rubbing his temple. "You okay?" she asked, forcing calm into her voice. "Yeah," he muttered. "Just a long day." She hesitated. "Everything good at work?" He froze briefly, a fraction of a second before nodding. "Same old." Then, without another word, he grabbed a folder from the counter and left. The sound of the engine faded into the night, leaving silence thick enough to choke her. Emily exhaled shakily. Her mind spun with questions. Who was Troy Keller? What did he mean by "you owe me"? And what could Daniel have possibly promised a man in prison? She rose, turning off the kitchen light. The room sank into half-darkness, the letter burning in her thoughts like a hidden ember. As she passed the window, she paused. Across the street, a car sat parked beneath the oak tree. Its headlights were off, but she could see the faint outline of someone inside, watching. A shiver ran down her spine. She turned away quickly, clutching the envelope to her chest. Somewhere deep inside, she knew she had just opened something she couldn't close again. Morning came heavy and slow. The Texas heat pressed against the windows before the sun had even risen, and Emily had barely slept. Every sound in the house, the groan of the floorboards, the distant bark of a dog, set her on edge. The letter from Troy Keller lay folded beneath her jewelry box upstairs, but its words kept echoing through her thoughts like a curse she couldn't shake. "You owe me, Daniel." She told herself she needed answers. She couldn't keep imagining things, doubting her husband over one strange letter. There had to be an explanation. There always was. Daniel was a good man, wasn't he? By 9 a.m., she was parked outside the Willow Creek Police Department, clutching a paper bag with 2 breakfast sandwiches. The building stood modest and square, its flag flapping lazily in the dry wind. She'd dropped by plenty of times before, usually bring Daniel coffee or meet him for lunch. The officers knew her, smiled when she walked in. Today, though, she felt like an intruder stepping into a world she no longer belonged to. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Phones rang. Printers clicked, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Emily scanned the desk for Daniel, but his wasn't occupied. Instead, she saw 2 officers standing near the copy machine, Sergeant Holt and Officer Ramirez, talking in low tones. She started toward Daniel's office when Holt's voice drifted across the room. "You hear Keller tried to reach out again?" Emily froze mid-step. Ramirez frowned. "From Huntsville?" "Yeah. Warden said he's been sending letters. Said something about unfinished business. Guess Reed didn't mention that. Huh?" Emily's pulse began to race. "Man's obsessed," Ramirez muttered. "Still blames Reed for what happened during the sting. Wouldn't you?" Holt said quietly. "Whole operation blew up. 1 woman dead, 1 man in prison. And Reed got promoted." Ramirez lowered his voice, almost a whisper. "You think Keller's telling the truth? About the girl?" "I don't know," Holt said after a pause. "But Reed's been acting off lately. If I didn't know better, I'd say something's eating him alive." The printer whirred. masking the silence that followed. Emily couldn't breathe. A sting. A woman dead. Her mind spun, trying to piece together fragments of words. She stepped backward, bumping into a chair, which scraped loudly against the floor. Both men turned. Mrs. Reed? Holt's brows rose. Didn't see you there. Emily forced a shaky smile, clutching the bag of food tighter. Hi. I just came to drop off breakfast for Daniel. Ah. He's out on patrol, Ramirez said, glancing between her and Holt. She'll be back soon. Right, she whispered. I'll just leave this on his desk. She hurried toward Daniel's office, her heart pounding so hard she thought they might hear it. Once inside, she shut the door softly and leaned against it, trying to steady her breath. The walls were lined with commendations and framed photographs. Daniel shaking hand with the chief, standing beside patrol cars, smiling at award ceremonies. But something on his bulletin board caught her eye, a faded photo pinned in the corner. Daniel in plain clothes, standing next to another man, Troy Keller, unmistakably younger but the same hard eyes she'd imagined from the letter. Between them stood a woman, dark hair, cautious smile. On the back, scrawled in faint ink, was a date. April 2015, Operation Shaw. Emily traced the letters with her thumb, her stomach twisting. The Keller case. The woman. The pieces started to take shape, forming a picture she didn't yet understand but was terrified to see clearly. As she set the photo down, a faint buzz came from Daniel's desk drawer. She hesitated, then pulled it open his phone. A new message blinked on the screen. Unknown number. You can't hide forever. Lydia's story isn't buried. Her blood turned to ice. The message on Daniel's phone burned into Emily's mind long after she slipped out of his office and drove home. You can't hide forever. Lydia's story isn't buried. Lydia. The name looped in her thoughts. Quiet but relentless. Who was she? What story? That night, Daniel came home later than usual. His uniform smelled faintly of smoke and rain, though the skies were clear. He barely looked at Emily as he hung his badge on the hook by the door. Rough night? She asked, careful to sound casual. Paperwork, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. And Keller. That man's been writing again. They called me from the prison today. Emily froze mid-step, her heart thudding. He knows about the letter. Writing, she said softly. What does he want? Daniel's eyes flicked to her, sharp, searching. Nothing that matters anymore. It's old history. His tone ended the conversation, but the lie beneath it rang loud and clear. Later, while he showered, Emily slipped into the study. She'd seen him stash old case files there before. The drawer was locked, but she'd learned enough from years of living beside a cop to find the spare key taped beneath the desk. Inside were stacks of reports, photos, and flash drives labeled in Daniel's clean handwriting. Her fingers shook as she flipped through the folders. Keller, Huntsville, 2015 Ops. Then she found it, a thin folder marked Operation Shaw, the same name she'd seen on the photo at the station. She opened it, and the first page made her breath catch. It was the same picture, Daniel, Troy Keller, and a young woman standing between them. But this print was clearer, newer, and on the back, someone scrawled a note in blue ink. Lydia Shaw, confidential informant. Emily studied the woman's face. Lydia's dark hair framed a soft, tired expression, her eyes holding a hint of fear even as she smiled. There was something haunting about her, something too human to fit into the word informant. Page after page, Emily found surveillance notes, police memos, and reports about a drug sting that went wrong. One report mentioned Lydia's disappearance. Informant failed to report after April 14th. Presumed relocated under protection. But another and signed memo said the opposite. Lydia Shaw confirmed deceased. No body recovered. Emily's throat tightened. Deceased? She whispered aloud. The floor creaked behind her. She turned quickly. Daniel stood in the doorway, damp hair, towel around his neck, eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Her breath faltered. I was looking for a pen. His gaze dropped the open folder, then back to her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he walked over slowly, took the folder from her hands, and closed it. "Don't go through my things, Emily," he said softly, almost kindly, but there was an edge beneath his voice that made her skin crawl. "I just wanted to understand." "There's nothing to understand," he interrupted. "That case is over. She's gone. It's done." He left the study, shutting the door harder than necessary. Emily sank into the chair, her pulse still racing. Gone. Done. The words rang hollow. Hours later, after Daniel had gone to bed, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message. Unknown number. Ask him what really happened to Lydia. Emily's hand trembled as she read it. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, the first storm of the season brewing over Willow Creek. The storm that had rolled over Willow Creek didn't fade by morning. It lingered, heavy and restless, like the unease in Emily's chest. Rain tapped against the windows in uneven rhythms, and every flash of lightning seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. She hadn't slept. Daniel had left early, saying he was covering a late report, but she knew he was lying. She could see in the way he avoided her eyes, the way his uniform shirt trembled slightly in his hands as he buttoned it. When the sound in his car finally disappeared down the road, Emily climbed out of bed and went straight to the study. The air inside still smelled faintly of cologne, and the locked drawer sat waiting like a dare. She hesitated for only a second before using the same key she'd found the night before. The folder marked Operation Shaw was there again, but this time she noticed a small black flash drive taped to the underside of the drawer. The label was written in Daniel's handwriting. Operation Shaw, footage. Her stomach twisted. He had kept it hidden, even from his own reports. She carried it to her laptop and hesitated before plugging it in, her hands trembling so badly she almost dropped it. The screen blinked to life. A single video file appeared, time-stamped April 15th, 2015. She clicked it. At first, the footage was shaky, filmed from a body cam. Grainy flashes of an old warehouse filled the frame, rusted beams, broken windows, and the echo of footsteps. Daniel's voice came through the audio, steady but sharp. "We need her to talk, Troy. She's the only one who knows where the shipment's going." A second voice, Troy Keller's, answered, rough and impatient. "She's scared out of her mind, man. You're pushing her too hard." Then came a third sound, a woman's soft sobs. Emily's heart froze. The camera tilted toward a folding chair in the middle of the room. Lydia Shaw sat there, wrist-bound, her face streaked with tears. She was begging, her voice cracked and desperate. "I told you everything I know. Please, I did what you asked." Daniel's shadow moved across the frame. His voice hardened. "You lied to us, Lydia. We have records that say otherwise." "No, please, I didn't." The argument built, each word louder than the last, until Troy stepped between them. "That's enough, Reed. She's done talking. We don't get the intel, Keller. We lose everything." The image wobbled as they shoved each other. The struggle moved off-screen. The sound of metal clattering filled the warehouse. Then a gunshot, sharp, echoing. The camera fell sideways. The last image captured was Lydia slumped in the chair, motionless. The video ended in static. Emily stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Her reflection in the dark glass looked pale, foreign, like someone else entirely. Daniel had always told her the 2015 sting had ended badly. But this wasn't a bad ending. It was a cover-up. Her hand shook violently as she ejected the drive and shoved it into her pocket. The house suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. Every picture on the wall, wedding photos, holidays, smiles, mocked her with their lies. The front door opened. She froze. Daniel's boots thudded against the tile. "Emily," he called out. "You home?" She scrambled to close the laptop, heart pounding so hard it blurred her thoughts. "Why, yeah, just making lunch." He walked into the kitchen, dripping from the rain. "You look pale," he said softly, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "You sure you're okay?" She forced a smile. "Just didn't sleep." He kissed her forehead, the gesture almost tender, but when his hand brushed her shoulder, she flinched. Something in his touch felt different now. Colder, more dangerous. "Get some rest," he murmured, his eyes lingering on her laptop a moment too long, before walking upstairs. Emily waited until she heard the shower running. Then she grabbed her keys, the flash drive hidden in her coat pocket, and slipped out the back door into the rain. Her car engine sputtered to life, wipers slicing across the glass. She didn't know exactly where she was going, only that she needed someone who could tell her who Troy Keller really was. The letter, the footage, the lies, all led back to one place, Huntsville Prison. The rain had followed her all the way to Huntsville. By the time Emily parked outside the towering gates of the state prison, her windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle. The facility loomed in the distance, gray, endless, and humming with the kind of silence that carried weight. She sat in the car for a moment, clutching the steering wheel. The flash drive felt heavy in her coat pocket, as if it were alive, pulsing with the secret she now carried. Every instinct told her to turn back, to forget what she'd seen. But the image of Lydia Shaw, tied to that chair, eyes wide in terror, wouldn't let her. If Daniel had done what she thought he had, she couldn't pretend anymore. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and metal. The clanging of gates and the echo of boots on concrete filled the corridors as she followed a guard down the hall. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered like an interrogation lamp, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. "This way, ma'am," the guard said, stopping outside a narrow visiting booth divided by thick glass. "You'll have 15 minutes. He's considered high risk, so no contact." Emily nodded, heart hammering. A moment later, the door on the other side opened. Troy Keller walked in, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame, his wrists cuffed. Time had carved hard lines into his face, but his eyes, sharp, watchful, held a spark that made Emily's stomach twist. He sat down slowly, picking up the receiver. "You're not the reporter," he said with a crooked grin. "So who are you?" Emily hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm Daniel Reed's wife." The amusement vanished from his face. His eyes narrowed, studying her like a puzzle he didn't expect. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "The cop's wife. Guess the truth finally reached your doorstep." "I saw the footage," she blurted. "Of Lydia. The warehouse. The shot." Keller leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "He told you it was an accident, didn't he?" She swallowed hard. "He told me nothing." A humorless laugh escaped him. "Then let me fill in the blanks. Your husband and I were partners on that sting. Lydia wasn't just an informant. She was his. He swore he'd protect her. But when things went south, he turned on both of us, left her there to die, and pinned the fallout on me." Emily's fingers tightened around the phone. "Why didn't you say anything?" He smiled bitterly. "Because I thought I could still save myself if I kept quiet. But Daniel, he made sure silence was my only option." "What do you mean?" "Tapes went missing. Reports rewritten. Lydia's body disappeared. I was charged with obstruction and assault, and he got a medal." He paused, then added quietly, "That man built a life out her death." Emily stared through the glass, tears threatening. "You're lying." "Am I?" Keller's eyes softened just slightly. "You already know I'm not. You saw the look in his eyes, didn't you? The fear, the guilt. You think a man like that sleeps peacefully?" She couldn't answer. Keller leaned closer. "If you're smart, Mrs. Reed, you'll get as far away from him as you can. Because if he finds out you came here..." He let the words hang. The guard tapped the glass. Time was up. Keller's gaze stayed fixed on her. "Tell him Troy says hello," he said as the guard pulled him away. Emily sat frozen, the receiver still pressed to her ear long after the line went dead. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low and heavy, pressing the air down. She walked back to her car in silence, each step slower than the last. As she opened the door, she noticed something wedged under her windshield wiper, a small white envelope. Her hand shook as she unfolded it. Inside was a single line, scrawled in familiar handwriting. "You shouldn't have gone there." The drive home felt longer than usual. Every streetlight stretched into a blur of yellow ghosts in Emily's vision. The letter on her passenger seat seemed to hum with invisible heat, its warning replaying in her mind like a siren. You shouldn't have gone there. By the time she reached the house, dusk had bled into darkness. The porch light was on, too bright, too deliberate. Daniel's truck sat in the driveway, gleaming wet from the rain. Her stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be home this early. Emily stepped inside quietly, but his voice cut through the air before she could take another step. "Where were you?" He stood in the kitchen, still in his uniform, hands gripping a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. His expression was calm, but there was something coiled behind it, a watchfulness she'd never seen before. "I went to see my mother," she lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "Your mother lives in Austin. That's a 3-hour drive. Strange trip for a Wednesday afternoon." Her throat tightened. "I needed space." He took a slow sip, watching her. "Space," he repeated like he was testing the word. "You've been needing a lot of that lately." Emily set down her bag, careful not to reveal the flash drive inside. "I've just been tired. You know, with everything." Daniel walked closer, his boots thudding softly against the floor. "Everything," he echoed again, stopping just inches away. "Emily, if there's something you're not telling me, now's the time." His tone was gentle, too gentle. The kind of tone a cop uses when he already knows the answer. Her pulse quickened. "I don't know what you mean." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat. Then Daniel smiled, the kind of smile that looked rehearsed. "Good," he said finally, "because I'd hate for someone to make trouble for us. You know how rumors start, especially with my work." He reached up and tucked a loose strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers cold. People get hurt when they don't know when to stop asking questions. Emily froze. She wanted to step back, but his hand lingered a second too long. Then, as quickly as the moment turned dark, he pulled away. "I'm heading to the precinct," he said casually, grabbing his keys. "Big meeting in the morning. Don't wait up." When the door shut behind him, Emily exhaled shakily. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that pressed down on her lungs. She went to the window and watched his taillights fade into the night. That's when she noticed something strange. Across the street, a dark SUV idled with its headlights off. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A new message. No name. Just a number she didn't recognize. "He knows about the prison visit. You're not safe. Leave. Now." Emily's hands trembled. Her first instinct was to call the police, but he was the police. She grabbed her bag, slipped the flash drive into her pocket, and stared one last time at the house that had once felt like home. The lie was cracking open now, and whatever came next, she knew she couldn't turn back. As she stepped into the night, thunder rumbled in the distance. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the streetlights. Emily drove in near silence, her knuckles white around the steering wheel. Every shadow along the road seemed to stretch toward her, threatening to reveal the truth she wasn't sure she could handle. She hadn't told a soul about the flash drive. She couldn't. Not yet. The knowledge it contained was dangerous. And now, so was Daniel. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Unknown. You can't hide from him, but you can decide what happens next. Meet me. Now." The line went dead. Her stomach churned. She had nowhere to go, except Daniel's old safe house file she discovered months earlier, hidden beneath his patrol car's dashboard. Maybe there, she could finally see everything. Hours later, Emily returned home under the cover of darkness. The house was empty. Daniel's uniform was gone, replaced by the faint smell of his cologne lingering in corners, like a warning. She locked the door and pulled the flash drive from her coat, the small black device suddenly heavy in her hands. Her laptop hummed quietly as she slid it into USB port. The files opened, and the first video she saw made her stomach drop. Daniel. The warehouse. Lydia. Emily had seen it before, yes, but now the footage continued beyond the gunshot. The camera had shifted. She saw Daniel dragging Lydia's limp body across the concrete floor, muttering under his breath, his hands shaking as though the act itself weighed more than he could carry. He shoved her into a crate, then wiped his hands on his jacket. Troy Keller appeared briefly, looking furious, but Daniel ignored him. Emily gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. She had loved this man. married him, trusted him. But the face on the screen was a stranger. Cold, calculated. Then she noticed the other files. Photographs of Lydia hidden in alleys, her terrified face, notes about surveillance, and Daniel's meticulous logs of every lie he'd told the department. Every promotion, every commendation, built on deception. A sharp knock on the door made Emily flinch. "Emily?" Daniel's voice, soft, measured. "Are you in there?" Her heart hammered. She hadn't expected him back so soon. She froze, unsure she should hide the laptop or confront him. "Emily, open the door," he called again. Instead, she stood her ground. "I know everything, Daniel." The words were barely out of her mouth before he appeared in the doorway. He looked calm, but his eyes were sharp, assessing dangerous. "Everything." "Yes." "Lydia, Troy, the sting, the tapes, all of it." For a moment, there was silence. Then Daniel's lips twisted into a grim smile. "I wondered when you figured out." "You lied to me," Emily whispered, tears streaking her face. "You lied about your work, about your past, about us." He stepped closer. "I didn't lie about us. I did what I had to do to survive. Do you think I wanted this? You think I wanted to lose her too?" Emily shook her head violently. "No, you wanted power, control, and now," her voice broke, "now I don't know who you are." Daniel paused, just inches from her. "I'm the man you married, the man who protected you. And yet you came here, snooping, digging. Don't you see? I can't let the past ruin what I built. I won't." Emily's knees weakened. "I trusted you, shattered trust," he said softly, almost mournfully. "Yes, that's the price of survival." And in that moment, Emily realized the truth. The man she had loved, the man she had believed in, no longer existed. Only Daniel Reed remained. Her chest tightened as she glanced at the flash drive, the laptop, the evidence of a life built on lies. And deep down, she knew that leaving this house alive tonight would be the first step toward reclaiming her freedom, but also the moment she would never feel safe again. The town of Willow Creek woke to news that would rattle its quiet streets. Emily Reed was gone. Her car was found abandoned near Lake Travis, parked haphazardly on a gravel turnout. The keys still dangled from the ignition, and her purse and phone sat neatly on the passenger seat. But there was no sign of her. Detectives cordoned off the area, their flashlights cutting through the early morning fog that drifted over the lake like smoke. The water glistened black and cold, swallowing reflections of trees and mist. Emily's absence became more than a missing person report. It became a question mark over the Reed household, over Daniel's carefully curated reputation. Inside the house, Daniel sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the floor. He had spoken to police early, his voice steady and calm, carefully measured. "I went to work," he said, "and when I came home, she wasn't here. I have no idea where she could have gone." Officers exchanged quiet looks. Something about him didn't fit the story. His composure was too precise, too practiced. But Willow Creek respected Daniel Reed, the officer who'd walked into burning houses, the man who had upheld law and order for over a decade. No one wanted to believe that beneath his polished badge lay a darker truth. Detective Mara Collins knelt by the car, noting the details. A coffee cup sat on the console. There were no signs of a struggle, no tire tracks leading away, except the faint marks of the car itself. Yet something fell off. Emily hadn't packed a bag. She hadn't called anyone. And yet, she was gone. Could she have left on her own? An officer asked. Collins shook her head. Not likely. Not with her phone and purse left behind. Something happened here. The news traveled fast. By mid-morning, the first neighbors were murmuring over fences. The local news crew arrived, cameras rolling. "A young woman missing," the reporter announced. "Wife of Officer Daniel Reed, last seen late last night near Lake Travis." Across the town, Emily's friends tried to reach her. Messages went unanswered. Social media posts sparked panic. Where was Emily Reed? What had happened to her? Back at the Reed residence, Daniel moved through the house with an eerie calm. He answered questions, explained his whereabouts, and maintained an air of controlled grief. Yet behind that mask, a storm was building. Every call from the police, every media inquiry, reminded him that the secrets of 2015, the Sting, Lydia Shaw, Troy Keller, were clawing closer to the surface. Meanwhile, the first forensic divers were deployed to the lake. They moved slowly, systematically, scanning beneath the dark surface. Their flashlights cut through the murk, searching for anything, a trace of a struggle, a footprint, a body. Hours passed and nothing surfaced. Emily's disappearance became more than a story. It became a mystery wrapped in tension. Every clue pointed in conflicting directions. Had she left to protect herself? Was she being held somewhere? Or was someone hiding the truth? Someone she trusted most? Late that evening, as the searchlight swept across the lake, a figure watched from the shadows atop the bluff overlooking the water. Daniel Reed, silent, calm, observing. The man everyone believed was a hero now cast a long, uneasy shadow over the town he had sworn to protect. And somewhere, far from the chaos, Emily Reed was out there, a woman with a flash drive, a letter, and knowledge that could destroy everything. Her disappearance was only the beginning. The fog hung low over Lake Travis, curling across the water like pale smoke as divers slipped beneath the surface. The morning sun barely penetrated the mist, and the town of Willow Creek held its breath. Everyone was waiting for answers, but the lake had only whispers to offer. Detective Mara Collins peered through binoculars from the shore, noting the divers' movements. They were methodical, sweeping sections of the lake bed with sonar and metal detectors. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the occasional splash or the hum of the boat's motors. Then, one of the divers surfaced, holding a small, charred object in his gloved hands. Colin's stomach clenched. It was a phone, badly burned, edges melted, screen shattered. She took it from him carefully, her gloves shaking. Back at the lab, technicians managed to recover fragments of voice memos stored on the device. Emily's trembling voice filled the room, her words fragmented but clear enough to send a chill through everyone listening. If anyone finds this, it's Daniel. He's not who you think he is. The letter, the drive, it's all here. I tried to leave, but I can't. I don't know who to trust anymore. Collins paused the recording. The audio alone was enough to confirm what she had begun to suspect. Emily hadn't left willingly. She had been trying to gather evidence. Evidence that could implicate Daniel in crimes long buried, crimes no one in Willow Creek could imagine. Fragments of papers and a locket also surfaced near the shore, carried by the current or perhaps discarded in haste. The locket, delicate and silver, held a tiny photograph of Emily and a woman she hadn't yet mentioned, Lydia Shaw. The connection was undeniable. The past was resurfacing, dragging with it the weight of years and lies. Word of the discovery spread through the town like wildfire. Media crews descended, broadcasting the recovered items and voice memos to a growing, horrified audience. Rumors about Daniel Reed intensified. The hero officer, the upstanding man, now cast under the shadow of suspicion. At the Reed household, Daniel's face was unreadable. He watched the news reports silently, hands folded over his chest. The calm he had maintained in front of police and neighbors was beginning to crack. Every recovered fragment, every word from Emily's recordings, threatened to unravel the life he had carefully constructed. Outside, the lake rippled gently in the morning light, as if mocking the chaos above. The fog slowly lifted, revealing more than just the water. It revealed a truth that the town could no longer ignore. Collins turned to her partner, voice low but firm. We need to reopen the Keller case. Everything, his letters, the sting, Lydia, it all connects to Emily. We can't ignore it anymore. The partner nodded, eyes fixed on the water. And Daniel, Collins' jaw tightened. If he knows what she has, he's already planning his next move. Far away from the chaos, in a house untouched by the media frenzy, someone was watching the lake from a darkened window. Emily's words, her voice memos, her hidden drive, they had stirred forces she couldn't control. And now the hunt was no longer just for her safety. It was for the truth. Month had passed since Emily Reed vanished, yet Willow Creek still felt suspended in a tense, uneasy silence. The lake had given up fragments, a burned phone, a locket, and scattered papers, But nothing had led directly to her. Daniel Reed continued his life in the town's eyes, composed, professional, and untouchable. But beneath that mask, cracks were forming, invisible to most but not to the persistent few who sought the truth. Detective Mara Collins had been reassigned temporarily to other cases, yet the Reed file gnawed at her. She knew there were pieces still missing, connections still hidden. One rainy afternoon, while cataloging old patrol cars slated for auction, she noticed a small black object wedged under the driver's seat of Daniel's cruiser. Curiosity pricked at her like a thorn. She bent down and retrieved it. A flash drive, coated in dust and grime, but intact. Back at the station, she inserted it into a secure computer. The contents made her blood run cold. The first file was a video, time-stamped April 15, 2015, warehouse sting. The footage was unedited, unlike the earlier version Emily had found. The camera shook as it followed Daniel and Troy Keller through the dimly lit warehouse. Lydia Shaw appeared in frame, her face pale and terrified. She was tied to a chair, pleading in soft, broken sentences, begging for mercy. The most chilling part came when Daniel's shadow loomed over her. His voice was sharp, controlling, merciless. "You promised to tell the truth," he said, almost calmly. "You know what happens when you don't." The camera wobbled violently as a struggle broke out. Troy tried to intervene, his hands grasping at Daniel's shoulders, but Daniel pushed him aside. A gunshot echoed, precise and deafening in the warehouse. Lydia slumped forward, unmoving. The final frame showed Daniel dragging her body into the shadows, disappearing from view. The footage ended abruptly, leaving nothing but darkness. Collins leaned back in her chair, heart hammering. The truth was undeniable. Daniel had orchestrated the cover-up, manipulating evidence, silencing witnesses, and burying the crime beneath years of accolades and commendations. As she processed the video, a new file blinked on the screen. It was a brief audio recording. Emily's voice, calm but determined, hidden somewhere in the warehouse after the sting. "If anyone finds this, it's him. He'll deny it. He always does. But it's here. The proof. Someone must see it." Her hands shook. Emily had anticipated this. She had tried to leave a breadcrumb trail for someone to uncover the truth. Collins knew the town would never see Daniel Reed the same way again. The officer who had been a hero, a symbol of justice, was revealed as a man who killed to protect his reputation. And worse, Daniel was still at large. Just as she closed the files, her phone buzzed. A tip had come in from an anonymous source, a cabin on the outskirts of Willow Creek. Collins' heart sank. The location could only mean one thing. Daniel was planning to disappear before the law could catch him. The shadow of the past was closing in, and the chase for justice was about to reach its terrifying climax. The cabin on the outskirts of Willow Creek sat silent and brooding, surrounded by towering pines and the lingering shadows of the late afternoon. Detective Mara Collins approached cautiously, flanked by a small team. Every instinct screamed that the final confrontation she had been anticipating for months was about to unfold. Inside, the air was thick and damp, carrying the faint metallic scent of blood and smoke. The flash drive in her pocket felt heavy, like a loaded weapon. She had gone over the evidence countless times. Daniel Reed's hidden files, the confession tapes, Emily's voice memos, and each time, the picture became darker. But nothing could prepare her for what she would find. The first room they entered was empty, save for overturned furniture and signs of a struggle. Collins' flashlight swept across the floor and landed on a piece of paper, scrawled hastily in blue ink. "I'm done hiding. This ends tonight." Her pulse quickened. Emily had returned. In the next room, they found him, Daniel Reed. The officer who had once been Willow Creek's shining symbol of justice now crouched over a table littered with evidence he had tried to manipulate. Files, old letters from Troy Keller, and photographs of Lydia Shaw. His eyes flicked up as the team entered, calculating, cold. "You shouldn't be here," he said evenly, voice controlled, almost eerily calm. Collins stepped forward, her hand on her holster. "Daniel Reed, it's over. We have the evidence. Emily's recordings of video, the letters. Everything points to you." He shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. I did what I had to do. For her. For us. She should be grateful. At that moment, a door creaked behind him. Emily stepped into the cabin, her presence commanding. She had changed, hardened, sharper, no trace of the frightened woman who had vanished months ago. In her hand was a small recorder, the last piece of evidence Daniel hadn't accounted for. "I'm not hiding anymore," she said, her voice calm but deadly. "Everything you did, Lydia, Troy, the sting, it all ends here. And you're finally going to pay for it." Daniel's eyes widened slightly, but he masked it quickly. "Emily, you don't have to do this." "I already have," she replied. She placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. Emily's own voice filled the room, recounting every lie, every manipulation, every crime Daniel had tried to bury. His face went pale as he listened to her words, clear, undeniable, and damning. "You should have left it buried," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. But Emily wasn't finished. She walked closer, eyes locked on his. "You underestimated me. You thought fear would keep me silent. You were wrong. I survived. I watched. I waited." The sheriff and Collins moved in, taking Daniel into custody. He went quietly, but his gaze never left Emily, a mix of rage, disbelief, and a lingering sense of fear. Outside, the storm that had been gathering all afternoon finally broke, rain washing over the cabin like a cleansing. Emily stood under the sheets of water, letting it soak her hair and clothes, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and grief. She had reclaimed control over her life, but the cost was heavy. The town would know Daniel's true face, and nothing could undo the months of fear and lies he had sown. Collins approached her gently. "You did the right thing, Emily. The evidence, it's all there. He can't manipulate anyone else now." Emily nodded, but her gaze drifted toward the edge of the forest, toward the lake where it all began. "It's done," she said quietly. "But some people, they leave scars that never heal." The flash drive, the letters, the recordings, all of it was in the hands of the authorities now. Justice had been served, but the emotional toll lingered, like shadows that refused to disappear. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale light over the pines and the lake beyond, Emily turned away from the cabin. She walked back to her car, the storm behind her, carrying both the weight of her past and the relief of finally taking her life back. The Reed house would remain empty for a while, a hollow reminder of betrayal. But Emily's story, her courage, her revenge, and her survival, would echo in Willow Creek for years to come. For the first time in months, she felt the world tilt back into balance. The darkness had ended, and she had survived.